Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. New species have been discovered. Which ones? Stay tuned to find out. You are listening to Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Brandon. Today we continue our nature article, Living Wonders from Around the World. And here to help me discuss this exciting topic is Hazel and David Morton. Welcome back to the program, panelists.
Well, thanks so much for having us.
And Hazel, what is something intriguing that you learned yesterday? Because I think we're all learning something from this article because these are new discoveries.
Yes. Well, I'll just say that I think those tall trees in Brazil would be very interesting, probably very old. There's only 25 of them, so there are the lonely giants. And maybe I can go see them, and that would be a good reason to go to Brazil.
They wouldn't be hard to see because they're huge.
Exactly.
Right? 130 feet tall.
Great place for a tree house.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's true. Also a great place maybe to shoot a movie or something like that scenery, right? And we also have David back with us. David, what intrigued you about yesterday's discussion?
Well, you know, those hunchback shrimp are very interesting to me because they live in the Southern Ocean, which is right along between New Zealand and Antarctica. And that is really cold water. You know, it's amazing that anything can live in that kind of environment. Yeah. And that just really blows my mind.
The coolest thing to me was the hitchhiking beetle. I mean, we have these beetles who hitch a ride on these ants, and that's kind of their survival technique, I guess. And we talked about mimicry, and you know, when we look at nature and we see like butterflies blending in with leaves, and David, you mentioned butterflies yesterday when talking about mimicry, and other animals that I think off air you mentioned something, Hazel, that was a good
there's
example.
Insects that look just like twigs and sticks, and sometimes you'll see insects that look just like leaves.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing.
It is. Yeah. It is incredible. And so today we're continuing our discussion. We're talking about a great ape and the deepest fish in the sea and so forth. And so, you know, if you're scientific, well, this article is just for you. And if you're not very scientific, well, you can still learn something new, right? David, you're a pretty scientific guy, right?
Yeah, well, this kind of stuff interests me, so I read about it a lot.
Yeah, and so we all have different interests, and that's what we try to do in Advanced, is to bring different topics up. I'm not very scientific, but we can kind of expand our borders, right, Hazel?
That's right. We can expand what we know, and maybe you'll become interested in something that you didn't know was so amazing.
Yeah, it is great to learn new things, and so that's what we're doing here today on page 13. And we invite you to open up your magazine or follow along on your digital device as we have our first reading for today.
A new species of great ape, Pungo tapanuliensis. Location, Sumatra, Indonesia. The great ape family welcomed an 8th member in 2017, Tapanuli orangutans. Tapanulis, named for the region of the island in which they're found, live in the southern range limit of Sumatran orangutans. An estimated 800 individuals exist in a small, fragmented habitat.
All right, we have a picture of this great ape there on page 12. You can take a look at that. And the great ape family welcomed an 8th member in 2017. And, wow, I think of the zoo, Hazel, when I think of apes. I don't see those out anywhere, but I do see them when I go to the zoo. So this is a species that we're familiar with.
That's right. We see some movies, Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So perhaps you see them on the movie screen. And they welcomed an eighth member of their family in 2017. So not last year, but a little bit before that, I guess. And it's named for the region of the island where they're found, which is an island in Indonesia.
All right. And an estimated 800 individuals exist in a small fragmented habitat. So this one doesn't say anything about them being endangered. So that's good. There's 800 of them. And so that's better than the 25 trees that we talked about and some of the critically endangered species.
Yeah, it seems strange to me that they can discover such tiny little species that they don't know about. And here there's 800 of these apes, which they didn't know about before, a new species. So that's quite a few not to know about. So when it says that this habitat is, what does it say? It's a fragmented habitat, maybe divided into pieces or something, but it's probably very isolated if they haven't discovered these apes before.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Hazel, because in our first article this month, which was the last article that we talked about social fragmentation. And here this word fragment comes up again. And David, you gave a great illustration about glass that's broken, right?
Right.
You have fragments, okay? And that's a good reminder of what fragmented means. It's kind of broken into small pieces, or in this case, this habitat that's kind of, I guess, broken up, right? And so that's all about this great ape that they have found in Indonesia. Next, we talk about the deepest fish in the sea. That's a pretty exciting place to be. Reminds me of a great Disney movie.
Under the Sea.
That's right, The Little Mermaid. Wonderful soundtrack. Let's get into that as we go to our next reading.
The deepest fish in the sea. Pseudoleparus swirae. Location, Western Pacific Ocean. Plenty of surprises still lurk in the deep ocean. Researchers exploring the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, found large numbers of weird, tadpole-like fish swarming their mackerel-baited traps. This translucent snailfish was recorded 5 miles below the surface of the ocean, making it the deepest dwelling fish in the world. Scientists believe the 5-mile mark represents a physiological limit below which most fish can't survive. Despite measuring just 4 inches in length, the Mariana snailfish is the top predator in its ocean floor habitat, the researchers observed.
Do you like going under the sea? I think David does. You've recently been scuba diving, right, David?
Yes, I recently got my scuba diving license after going
Congratulations.
through some training. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Did you see some interesting creatures under the sea?
I did. It was. I did almost die at one point, but after I came back from that, thanks to my very brave teachers who knew exactly what to do, then I was able to kind of relax. I learned some things, and then I saw so many fascinating creatures, different kinds of eels, the really long ones, and these electric blue fish that were just swarming everywhere. Saw some coral. Wow. It was absolutely, and just the amazing thing about the ocean is that it's just... it's just flourishing with all kinds of different life.
It's like a whole nother world, right?
It is. It really is a whole nother world. And I feel like this fish that we see here and just that region of the world is very representative of just how deep and wild that world is.
Well, we are in the Western Pacific Ocean, and there's a lot of surprises down there, Hazel.
That's right. Those surprises still lurk in the deep ocean. That word lurk reminds me of the internet. because I used to read, I don't comment, I just lurk, which means you're kind of hanging out there, not really very obvious to other people. So just like some people lurk on the internet, these surprises, they're at the deep part of the ocean and they're there, but they're not obvious right now. We need to kind of discover them.
That's kind of understandable, right? I mean, the ocean is vast.
Right.
I mean, it's huge. So I think it's maybe not so surprising that you'd find something down there you didn't know was there.
Yeah, but what's surprising about it is that we have, at this point, pretty detailed photographs of, places like Saturn, or Jupiter, these planets in our solar system that we've sent out satellites to do extensive study of. And yet, even just on our own planet, the deepest regions of the ocean are still very much unstudied and unexplored because we can't get there yet because it's so, the pressure is so high there.
Yeah, that's what I had seen some shows about. The pressure is so strong there that it takes just very special equipment and little submarines to go down there. It's just not an easy task to explore this area.
All right. Well, researchers here are exploring the Mariana Trench, and it's the deepest place on Earth. Actually, call it the Challenger Deep, which is actually the deepest place on Earth. It's 10,994 meters deep. That's 36,070 feet, and that's kind of deep.
Yeah. Actually, I looked this up this morning, and I saw that just for reference, if you took Mount Everest, the tallest, one of the tallest mountains on Earth, if you took Mount Everest and put it into the Mariana Trench, it would fit. And there would still be like 1.2 miles left above the peak of Mount Everest, right? So imagine climbing Mount Everest and then some, but going underwater. And that's how deep the Mariana Trench is. Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It is. Well, researchers found something weird, something that was just plain strange. What did they find, Hazel?
Well, they found tadpole-like fish, and tadpoles usually have long, slim bodies, a little bit like the picture you see here on page 13. That does look like a tadpole.
Yeah.
Tadpoles become frogs, right? They're young frogs that haven't changed yet, and so that describes a tadpole, just like the picture there, and that's what they discovered, these little fish. It says translucent snailfish.
And translucent, well, you see the picture there that basically explains what translucent is. It's almost transparent, and so it's clear, basically, or nearly clear. And so this translucent snailfish was recorded 5 miles below the surface of the ocean, and that is an important point. Why?
Oh, because the deeper you go in the ocean, the more pressure there is pushing in on anything there, right? And as living beings, humans, we can only take so much before our bodies start to actually get crushed. So the fact that this fish, a living creature, not just a rock or a plant, but a living creature, can be living at that kind of depth, it shows that it shows the resilience of life, and it shows that there are different ways that organisms can adapt to really, really, dangerous, volatile, or not very hospitable places to live.
Well, so this Mariana snailfish is the deepest dwelling fish in the world. That's something you may want to underline if you have your magazine, because that kind of stands out, this fact that we've just discovered. So scientists believe the 5-mile mark represents a physiological limit below which most fish can't survive. David just told us about the pressure in the ocean, and so organisms, most fish, so forth, cannot survive below that point, according to scientists.
So that's the deepest one that is known. I mean, the world is full of surprises, so perhaps at some point when they can discover things at a lower level, maybe they would even discover something
Yeah.
equally as amazing. But for now, I guess that's the
Right.
deepest.
They mentioned specifically fish. I said organisms. That's not what they said. So they are talking here specifically about fish. But I suppose the deeper you go, David, you wouldn't see as much life in general because of the makeup of the ocean the deeper you go.
Yeah. Generally, the deeper you go, the less life you'll see. But in other ways, you still see all kinds of interesting things. Like even down below the place where even there's a certain point where sunlight can no longer reach the deeper you go in the ocean. And so people may have thought years ago, like lower than that point of sunlight, nothing can live because it's too cold. Wow. Then they find these fish that have these special it's called bioluminescence, but they basically use their body's energy to create a little light, and they're called lampfish. And they're predatory, they're very dangerous, they're very scary looking, but they're beautiful in other ways because, like, wow, this fish creates its own light from its bodily energy, and that's how it navigates.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little sidebar there that's not in print, but David just provided for us. Thank you for that. Well, so we've learned about the great ape and this deepest fish in the sea. Next, we learn about a fungal feeding flower.
A fungal feeding flower, Sciaphila sugimatoi. Location, Ishigaki Island, Japan. Among Japan's well-documented flora, one unusual flower has eluded science until now. In September and October, Sciaphila sugimatoi produces delicate magenta blossoms in only 2 locations in Ishigaki's humid forest. The plant lives symbiotically with a fungus, which provides it with the energy it needs to survive. That's in contrast to most other plants, which derive energy from the sun using photosynthesis.
All right, we're going to Japan. I've never been there. I'd like to go. Have either of you been?
I have been for just a few days. It's
All right.
very nice.
Yes.
A lot of people enjoy traveling there. It's organized and clean. That's the phrase people used. And
Yes.
it's true. It's
Right.
a very nice place to visit.
David?
I have not been yet, but
Well-
I would love to visit.
Well, David, let me tell you what you should see. When you
Please
go
do.
there, you should see this fungal feeding flower. that
Nice.
you just discovered.
That's where I'm going. As soon as my plane lands, I know what I'm looking for.
It's unusual, and it has eluded science until now. And so scientists have discovered this. I like that word eluded, Hazel.
Yeah, eluded. It's been lurking.
Yeah, I know. Right?
It's hard to find. Scientists haven't found it.
It's not
for
easy
many,
to be
many
caught,
years, right? It's not easy to find. It's not easy to define.
But sometimes we think of like a criminal or something eludes. You know, you escape.
Eluded the police,
Right.
hid in different places. They couldn't come up with him. So.
But here it's more of, well, it just wasn't discovered, basically. They didn't know
Right.
about it. All right. So in September and October, this flower produces delicate blossoms. Okay. And only a couple of locations, and they are in this humid forest, or they are in a humid forest. That's where they like to grow. And so if you are in this area of Japan, on this island, Ishigaki Island, you can maybe see if you can find that. So David, this is your mission.
That's my mission. Yeah, I gotta maybe this weekend I'll just pop on over.
All right,
to
let's go to Japan and take a look at the fungal feeding flower.
See
I
about
just
this
like saying
flower.
that. I'm going to say that as
Yeah,
many
I
times
can
as I
tell
can.
you do. Also, delicate magenta. I think you didn't say that word, but magenta is a color that's purple-ish color.
Yes.
So you can look that up and find out exactly what color that is. But you'll hear that color, magenta. Often in the printing business, it's a certain color ink that's used sometimes instead of red, I think. Reddish, bluish.
Yeah, if you just Google that, magenta blossoms, you'll see what exactly the color looks like. It's probably the best way to get a description of it. Well, the plant lives symbiotically. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, you can. I've always said symbiotically, but
Okay.
I think you can actually say it either way, though I'd have to have someone check it
All
out.
right. Well, what does it mean?
Symbiotically means basically that you have two organisms that rely upon each other in some way to survive. Like a great example, one of my favorite examples of this is that I think there's a special kind of bird, and that symbiotically lives with, I think it's alligators or crocodiles. It's one of those guys, but there's a special little bird that actually eats the food from between the teeth of the alligator or the crocodile. So it's a symbiotic relationship. The bird gets to feed from the mouth of the alligator, and then the alligator keeps its mouth clean because the bird is picking out the food from it, right? So these two organisms, they live in a way where they are relying upon each other for survival.
So, in other words, the fungus and the flower, they are relying on one another.
Yeah.
So the plant lives with the fungus, which provides it with the energy it needs to survive. So the fungus provides the plant with the energy it needs to survive. That's in contrast to most other plants, which actually get energy from the sun. That's a cool fact to know concerning this flower. We have the word derive here. Deriving energy, just getting energy from the sun by using photosynthesis, which is that process of a plant getting energy from the sun. We have one more cool species to talk about, actually a couple because we have a sidebar, but in our actual text we have one more, and it is a cave-dwelling beetle. Let's discover this as we go to our last reading for today.
A cave-dwelling beetle, Schwedites bellis. Location, China. Duan Karst, a system of limestone caves in China's Guangxi province, is a veritable kingdom of cave-dwelling ground beetles. To date, more than 130 species have been discovered in the region, the latest being Schwedites bellis. Researchers marvel at how extremely cave-adapted the beetle appears, with its dramatically long head and neck and slender body. Beetles that evolve in the darkness of caves often take on a similar set of characteristics, including narrow bodies, spider-like appendages, and loss of wings, eyes, and color.
All right, a cave-dwelling beetle. Now, earlier we learned about a hitchhiking beetle. This is a cave-dwelling beetle, and we're talking about a system of limestone caves in a province in China. Well, and they use an interesting word here that we don't see often to describe it, David.
Yes, they say that it's a veritable kingdom of cave-dwelling ground beetles. Mm-hmm. So veritable here is just like an emphasizing word.
Yeah.
Right? So they're saying, we know that it's a system of caves, but it's not just caves. It's like a kingdom of beetles. It's not just a kingdom. It is a veritable kingdom of cave-dwelling beetles, which just emphasizes that there are lots of beetles and lots of different kinds of beetles living in these caves.
Yeah, lots of different kinds. How many species have been discovered here, Hazel?
More than 130 species have been discovered in that region, in those caves.
Yeah, and they adapt. And that's what we keep seeing, David, with these different species. They learn how to adapt, or they've been given this ability to adapt. And so researchers marvel at this. And if you marvel at something, you're just in awe. You're surprised. You don't know how this is possible, but there it is. And so it makes you kind of go, wow, that's amazing. They marvel at how extremely cave-adapted the beetles appear.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about the natural world that should really make us just marvel at it, just to be in awe of it, because a creature, so this creature has a dramatically long head and neck and a slender body, right? Basically, a creature, based upon its environment, it will develop the things that it needs to live in that environment well, and it will lose the things that it doesn't need. Right? So over time, these things will adapt to their surroundings. And I love how it's described as extremely cave adapted, right? Its features and its attributes are very well suited for a cave environment.
All right, and so this is what happens with beetles in caves, apparently. They often take on a similar set of characteristics. And isn't that cool that they are just able to adapt in that way? And they, in this case, they have these narrow bodies, spider-like appendages, and a loss of wings, eyes, and color. So it's incredible how these species adapt.
You can look at the picture. They're very different than the image you get when you think of a beetle. You think of something fat with short legs, and this is just extremely different, not at all the same.
All right, well, we have one more species to highlight. It's not in our official text here. It appears as a sidebar there at the bottom of page 14. And I know David is pretty excited about this. We don't have a lot of time left, but tell us a little bit about this bacterial eruption, David.
Okay, well, what makes this find exciting is that it shows it's another side of life's resilience. So an underwater volcano called Tagoro erupted. It happens fairly frequently in some parts of the world. And it wiped out much of the ecosystem off the coast of El Hierro in the Canary Islands. So it just this volcano erupts, all the life is wiped out. So then 3 years later, not right after, 3 years later, this strange new bacteria was the first organism to recolonize the area that had all of its life wiped out. So there was no competition. This new proteobacteria comes in, and it just blankets the whole area with these little hair-like structures. They call it Venus's hair. So it's just an incredible testament to the way that life adapts, the way that life can change from one environment to the other, and just it's a really beautiful thing,
Wow. Incredible. Learned so much from this article, right? And there's lots of new things that they're discovering, and we hope that you enjoyed learning this along with us. Tomorrow, we are continuing our nature article, but we're going to be talking about horses. This is not a new discovery, but we will be talking about some famous wild horses in the state of North Carolina in the United States. So join us as we wrap up this month's nature article tomorrow. Until then, this is Brandon
and Dave.
Hazel.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye,
See you later.
everybody.